A lot of readers and authors alike seem to compete to have the most complex stories under their belts, but I think that's missing the point. Complex and nuanced narratives are interesting, but only if they're done well. I've always been of the opinion that a simple story told well is always going to be more appealing than a complex story that isn't. I recently experienced a story that exemplified this incredibly well, and that is of Fire Emblem Engage. But don't worry, you don't need to be a gamer to understand this essay, though I will be spoiling the plot, so watch out for that. Part of the reason Engage stands out is because of how it compares to the story that came immediately before it. Fire Emblem Three Houses was a departure from the rest of the modern era for daring to tell a more ambiguous story of friends taking part in opposite sides of a war. Every faction had skeletons in their closet, and each leader of those factions was doing what they thought was right, or at least that the ends justified the means. The different routes weren't perfect by any means, and there were inconsistencies, but Three Houses still got some much deserved praise for trying something different. 3.5 years later we got Fire Emblem Engage. Compared to the branching paths of the grounded title before, Engage was vibrant in both art and narrative, with more characters that felt larger than life, and a straightforward good versus evil story. Even when it was revealed, the internet was abuzz with complaints that Engage was too anime or dumb. And yes, Engage's story is straightforward, but it's also the tightest story of recent Fire Emblem memory, with great and emotional moments of both the happy and the sad varieties. Even the best routes in Three Houses can't claim that due to the map and plot point reuse running rampant between them. Much of this is due to the story focusing on the growth of the main protagonist Alear. They wake up after a 1,000-year coma after serious injuries received in a battle against the big bad Sombron. They have amnesia and are completely unprepared to see three attendants upon waking up who immediately freak out and start praising them. Things get worse when they leave their sanctuary to visit their mother and are attacked by corrupted, essentially zombies resurrected by magic. They immediately try to run because the zombies scare them, but they have to fight to save Fram and Clan, who get surrounded trying to help Alear escape. They're saved by their mother Lumera, but the amnesia. This is our first emotional beat. We've had an amnesiac lead in Fire Emblem before. In fact, it was the first Avatar protagonist of the modern era, Robin. But we've never seen what being an amnesiac does to someone. Here's a woman who claims to be Alear's mother and clearly loves them deeply, but Alear doesn't know anything about them. There's a distance there. Painful for Lumera and awkward for Alear, and that doesn't go away even after Lumera gives Alear a mock battle to get them into shape and maybe spark some memories. Lumera is attacked that night and dies from her injuries because she transferred too much of her energy into healing Alear, giving us a second emotional punch helped by the amazing voice acting. All Fire Emblem protagonists' parents die except Eliwood, so we all knew this was coming, but the scene is masterful. The guilt radiates from Alear. Lumera was injured protecting them and can't be healed because she weakened herself for their sake too, and they still can't remember her even after all the love she gave them. This pain sticks with Alear too, with them getting emotional, meeting Queen Ev, and reminded of Lumera again. Lumera's impact on Alear comes up in future scenes as well, so it's not like she was fridged as some Fire Emblem parents are. Alear chooses to carry out Lumera's dying wish to gather all 12 emblem rings and defeat Sombron. This set track throughout the entire continent consisting of 4 other countries. Alear acts as a standard FE protagonist for the most part, wanting to help others and being kind, but has more awareness about them than their predecessors, from little things like inviting merchants into the holy ground of their home base because they have no resources of their own, and punishing Yunaka by asking her to join their army, though admittedly the latter is more of a slap on the wrist. Alear has bite though. As mentioned before, Lumera's death remains a sticking point that triggers their rage against anyone involved in it. There's also no nonsense on the battlefield when someone tries to get a rise out of them, as Goldmary finds out the hard way. Alear also avoids the trap of past protagonists having dedicated simps, because that's what they are, by being openly creeped out by them and asking them to stop. That probably doesn't mean much for non-Fire Emblem fans, but it says a lot for those in the know. Chapters 10 and 11 are a turning point for both Alear and the story as a whole. The king of the second country, Morian, has been kidnapped by that of Elucia for a dark ritual. The story had some humorous moments until now, namely with Alcrest and Diamant's retainers, but everything changes when this part of the story begins. Marth, who is Alear's confidant and strongest ally until this point, breaks away from being encouraging and tells Alear that this is a fight they should not take part in, only to be talked into it by Alear's confidence that they have the upper hand due to already having 6 of the 12 rings. They go inside hoping to stop the ritual, only to find that it's already taken place and Sombron has returned. Not only that, what they thought was King Morian alive and well was actually a zombie. Marth again tells Alear to run, but even though they now agree, they hesitate along with Morian's sons because they don't want to leave him as a mindless monster. Things go from bad to worst when Sombron locks him inside the cathedral and the 4 hounds, Sombron's most faithful and powerful followers, arrive, along with the mage who killed Lumera. Not only that, she is revealed to be Veyle, the little girl who befriended Alear while searching for her sibling, and helped them find the cathedral they're now in, and has stolen all 6 emblem rings and the time crystal that Alear has been using to keep everyone safe. One by one, Sombron corrupts all of the rings in front of Alear as they beg for them to come to their senses. They wage a fight to reclaim them and only succeed in putting Morian down before fleeing. What follows is not a fight but an escape. Alear and the party flee into the woods chased by a horde of corrupted, along with Veyle and the four hounds, who are now using the 6 emblems that they've been using. They're only saved by Ivy, who's in turn only here because Alear understood that her father had left her to die to buy time for the ritual and spared her life earlier, and gives them 2 new rings, but this only gives them enough power to complete their escape and not to fight back. Like Lumera's death, this is another failure in Alear's eyes at 6 with them, now realizing that Marth hadn't wanted them to ignore Morian but to act tactfully. The group, now with Ivy and her retainers, go to the 4th kingdom, Solm, to make sure their ring's safe and to build up their strength once more. Solm's royal family lightens the mood, and we also get some humour out of Alear's fear of the corrupted when Solm reveals it has a 2nd ring hidden in some supposedly haunted ruins. But then Veyle shows up. This happens after an appearance at the castle by 2 of the hounds and Hortensia, Ivy's sister, who stayed behind because she was promised to return to the status quo. So naturally the heroes are already on edge, but seeing the person responsible for the worst of everything that happened sets all of them off, Alear included. What follows is a scene where all of the heroes just rain down hate on Veyle until she runs off, practically in tears, with Alear refusing to go after her because they're convinced they'd be led into a trap. Again, this may not be a big deal for non-Fire Emblem fans, but you don't ever see a protagonist be so spiteful. Even anti-heroes like Edelgard act composed and respectful to their enemies. However, Veyle has a split personality. It was another Veyle who did all these things, and this was a Veyle who'd woken up in a strange land confused and had just tried to reunite with her only friend. She goes back to the hounds who she treats as family, and they promise to smooth things over between her and Alear, which happens, but only back in Firene, the 1st kingdom, where they torched a port city to get the hero's attention. This time it's the villain's turn to be spiteful. Zephyr, the leader of the hounds, explains that they and Sombron, who is Veyle's father, considered the good Veyle to be a defect and the bad Veyle, which she created, to be the real one, right in front of Veyle and Alear, telling them that the attack was on Veyle's orders before forcing her to switch back, which obviously messes both of them further. What follows is a massive set piece of battle, with Veyle, the 4 hounds, and King Hyacinth, the aforementioned king who kidnapped Morian and Ivy and Hortensia's father, revived as a lifelike zombie by Veyle, with the 6 stolen emblem rings versus the heroes and the 6 other rings they've collected in the meantime, with Zephyr and Veyle mocking Alear for caring for the wrong Veyle. When the villains are defeated, the real Veyle takes back control long enough to throw one of the rings back to Alear and apologize for everything. But this gets her punished by Zephyr, which drives an even deeper wedge between her and Mavier, another 4 hound and the only one who cares for Veyle. This adds another wrinkle into the story too. Veyle isn't innocent, but she shares her body with Sombron's greatest asset, so what now? And of course, how they treated Veyle is yet another thing for Alear to feel guilty about. With all 12 rings now in play, the next goal is to return to Elusia. This involves a temporary alliance with Mavier and Marnie, yet another 4 hound who are separated from their allies. After a fight in a city that Alear abandons because they're not naive enough to think it will still have survivors, realizing that it was ransacked and its people turned into corrupted too long ago, Mavier explains Veyle's past to Marnie and the heroes alike. She was too young to act in the previous war, and her mother was killed when it was discovered she was Sombron's maid, leaving Veyle alone until she fell in with a cult that worshipped him 500 years later. She was put to sleep until the present day, only for her father to treat her as a defect for not being able to do anything he wanted. So, more guilt for Alear, but also for Marnie, who never knew the full story until now. Alear gets shaken once more after a fight with Grist, the final 4 hound, who abuses the power of Celica. He gives the ring back on defeat, but when Alear purifies her, reveals that they're a child of the Fell Dragon. Only Fell Dragons use incantations to use emblem rings, and this was foreshadowed early on, something Engage can do because of the extra time spent to polish a single story instead of trying to tell multiple. Sombron used incantations to corrupt the 6 emblem rings, but when Lumera used Sigurd earlier, she simply prayed, and this was also foreshadowed by how surprised the hounds were that Lumera had a child in the first place. Alear tries to leave because they betrayed everyone's faith, and only a divine dragon can defeat Sombron, but Emblem Sigurd explains that this is why Lumera transferred her power into Alear, to give them the power of a divine dragon so they could live a peaceful life instead of serving Sombron, though now it takes on a double meaning of allowing Alear to fight. This crisis of faith is over pretty quickly, to be fair, but the scene otherwise is quite well done. This transfer of divinity is also why Alear has 2-toned hair and eyes, for those wondering. They were originally all red. Things go bad again when they see Veyle once more, now wearing a helmet fashioned by Sombron to amplify Zephyr's magic and kill her good self forever. Marnie tries to break it, but it is too strong for her, and Zephyr kills her for her trouble, which makes Mavier permanently switch sides. One last battle with Veyle ensues before her good self surfaces once more. Marnie's attack cracked the helmet, but Sombron also shows up and tries to kill her for turning on him, only for Alear to take the blow. Alear straight up dies after apologizing for what she said, and Sombron tells Veyle who they were before her evil self asserts itself. The siblings reunite in the afterlife, and it's a truly touching moment, where Veyle admits she's tired of everything she's been through, and now that she's finally reunited with her sibling after 1,000 years, she she just wants to give up and go to sleep. Alear actually admits they get where she's coming from, but asks her not to die before living a proper life, and despite being terrified of the corrupted, asks Veyle to revive her as one so they can fight again. Veyle returns to her body and breaks the helmet completely, freeing herself before doing just that. Veyle joins the party and helps Alear gather the 12 rings after Sombron used their power, but this drains Alear's energy and they die again. This time the emblems themselves combine their strength to revive them as the 13th emblem, the Fire Emblem. It's something they can never do again, but they trusted Alear enough to give them that power. Sombron at this point has retreated to a portal in the sky and raised his homeland, Gradlan, from the ocean. To reach him, the heroes need to break 3 crystals that power a barrier protecting him. The first is protected by Zephyr and Gris, who are finally killed, but not before Zephyr gives Veyle a gem that will help them reach the second crystal as a way of cleaning the slate, though in private admits she did it out of spite because Sombron refused to give her a child, and that was her motivation. She just wanted a family. Gris admits that his motivation was Zephyr herself. He always saw her as a big sister or mother. It's a very small thing, but villains are another thing that most Fire Emblems struggle with, so it's great that Engage even had time to give them this. The second crystal is hidden in the past, and what Zephyr gave away was something that would let them go back to the war 1,000 years ago where they meet Alear's past self. This Alear is cold and detached, but only in tone. What they say is another matter entirely, because they're terrified. Sombron had multiple children because he thought only children could be truly loyal to him, but he also killed them whenever they disappointed him. Alear has already lost 2 older siblings and watched 2 younger ones being fed to the corrupted. This is why even the current Alear has such a deep fear of them, because of course they would. Past Alear is also deeply jealous of present Alear being able to speak their mind about things, but dismisses the encounter as a nightmare when waking up upon defeat, in front of Lumera. Here again, Alear tries to fight before admitting to being confused that they don't want to, so they must be defective. They even mutter defect, defect over and over again, before Lumera calms him down and offers to come see them again, setting up Alear's eventual betrayal of Sombron and adoption by her. Even without that though, it's horrifying to see who Alear used to be, and fleshes the current version out as a result, something that most Fire Emblem leads never get. The final crystal is guarded by a lifelike resurrection of Lumera, the same as Hyacinth. Both of them have all their memories intact, so it really is like fighting the real deals. Veyle even tries to fight Lumera herself to save Alear the pain, but Alear forces her way into the fight. It hurts them to fight Lumera, of course. And remember that they still feel doubly guilty about what happened to her, but they stick to what Lumera told them to do in her original form, act as a divine dragon would. So turns down her offer of living a quiet life together. This Lumera is as calm and polite as she was before, making the fight even more emotionally taxing, with her facade cracking whenever it dawns on her that she can't have a happy ending, such as when she yells at Veyle that it's unfair that she gets to live with Alear when she can't. When she's defeated though, the real Lumera emerges long enough to thank Alear for their actions and to reiterate that she's proud of them. The final battle starts with Sombron explaining himself. He's using the portal to leave the continent of Helios, but only to find yet another emblem that has been with him since he was abandoned as a child from another world. He feels the emblem abandoned him and wants answers, unable to see anything from Helios itself as real, not even his own children. Is this a deeply complex backstory? No, but it's still far more than most antagonists who just want power for its own sake. Sombron even says he doesn't want anything to do with Helios, but is challenged by Alear simply because he's done too much to get away with it. The fight proper begins with Sombron sealing away all of the emblems, only for Alear to bring them back through sheer force of will in what is one of my most favourite moments in all of Fire Emblem, complete with a friendship speech. Is it cheesy? Yes, but it sums up Alear's growth quite well as someone who has also lost and reforged bonds both in the past and present, and friendship is a mechanic in Fire Emblem, so it has tangible effects too. Sombron is defeated, and even with Alear and Veyle standing before him, refuses to acknowledge them, but per Alear's advice, calls out to his emblem one last time and sees it. Maybe it's just a dying dream, maybe the emblem really did appear to him, or maybe he was seeing Alear, since an early line suggested they have a similar aura to his emblem, but he dies in peace and Alear even mourns him a little. Again, this is a little step that goes a long way to making someone memorable, and I think makes a good case for Sombron being a good villain once you exclude fleshed out heavy-hitting villains like Leon. The story ends with the 12 emblems disappearing due to Sombron's actions, and Alear succeeding their mother as a divine dragon monarch, with a hint that the emblems may not be fully gone. A straightforward story as I said before, but a well-written one with a great lead. Even the twists that we saw coming were handled in a great way. Lumera's death, obvious, but the emotions tied up in it were amazing. Alear being Veyle's sibling, not too hard to figure out, but Alear dying before they can tell her, and her being told by Sombron instead to mock her, and their conversation in the afterlife, so painful. I said this in my main review too, but Alear themselves are also an incredible lead, and I hope this essay showed off why on top of why the story has value too. It's a story that sticks with you because it's so simple, because that just makes the hard-hitting stuff hit even harder, both for you and for Alear. He becomes a stronger person and protagonist because of it. As a bonus, the ending song is also sung from Lumera's perspective, apologizing that Alear had to go through all of this, but also recounting their journey and how proud she is of it. It's not part of the story exactly, but it's a great send-off, and even manages to incorporate the incantations of all 12 emblems and pair them with the countries they're found in at the same time, which is definitely worth praising. Of course, music and voice acting are a big part of the main story too. Fire Emblem has always had incredible music, so there's no surprise there. This casts us to be one of the best I've ever heard. Since this is a video partly about Alear, obvious shoutouts need to go to Brandon McInnes and Laura Stoff for their incredible performances as both male and female Alears respectively, both in the main story and support. It's rare that I want a direct sequel to a Fire Emblem, but I would love to see Alear and the others again. I really would. Maybe Koei Tecmo could give us a Warrior-style sequel? While Alear got the lion's share of development, I want to give a shout out to the supporting cast as well. They're definitely simpler than Three Houses, but that doesn't mean they're simple, period. For example, Alfred seems like a goofy fitness buff at first, but then you realize it's his way of compensating for having a weak constitution that according to the epilogue kills him early into his reign. Or how about Tamara? She acts goofy, but it stems from her belief their ruler needs to do so from among their people instead of from a palace, which puts her at odds with the no-nonsense Diamond, who seems perfect on the surface but is terrified of filling his dad's shoes. So to cut a long essay short, while I used Fire Emblem Engage as a case study, this applies to all stories. Don't dismiss something just because it seems simple or silly, because a lot of simple things usually convey heavy-hitting stuff because they don't waste time obscuring it. Keep an open mind. Thank you for reaching the end of this essay. I hope you liked it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic and even engage in Alear if you're Fire Emblem fans. Thank you all again, and as always, have a great day.
I understand. I'll collect the rings. I swear to you. And I'll fight. I'll do whatever you want. But please, don't leave me. Mother! Young one. How I've longed to hear you call me that. All of those years, I held out hope. My heart is fuller than you could ever know. It can't end like this. You were going to give me that ring once my memories came back. You promised. And there are so many things you haven't told me yet. You said that we would talk. I did. There's still so much I wanted to say to you. Being your mother, becoming your mother has brought so much happiness into my life. I know. And I'm happy to be your child. In this moment, here and now, and 1,000 years ago, I am. Don't go. Stay with me until I remember again. Please, Mother, I need more time.
I understand. I'll collect the rings. I swear to you. And I'll fight. I'll do whatever you want. But please, don't leave me. Mother!
Young one. How I've longed to hear you call me that. All of those years, I held out hope. My heart is fuller than you could ever know.
It can't end like this. You were going to give me that ring once my memories came back. You promised. And there are so many things you haven't told me yet. You said that we would talk.
I did. There's still so much I wanted to say to you. Being your mother, becoming your mother has brought so much happiness into my life.
I know, and I'm happy to be your child. In this moment, here and now, and 1,000 years ago, I am. Don't go! Stay with me until I remember again. Please, Mother! I need more time!